Amy Whitaker Anders was 34 years old and had been a widow for 5 years. The sudden death of her husband forced her to deal with raising her only son, 9-year-old Jake, and her job as a staff writer for the local newspaper in Avon, Indiana. Being a mother wasn't bad for her. In fact, she was quite proud of the son she had raised virtually single-handedly, and the person the little boy was becoming. A loving, polite, and kind child. Extremely kind. Perhaps too kind. A quality he inherited from his father, as she always made a point of remembering, and which elicited the sympathy of all who knew him. However, Amy sometimes wished her son had more character, that he could put good manners aside when necessary and stand up to those who would do him or others harm. If you need to let someone know they're mistaken, you must do so, dear. It's important to be polite, and I expect you to be polite at all times. However, there are situations where being overly compliant may prevent you from helping others, and even yourself, leaving you at a disadvantage. Do you understand, dear? Do you understand what I'm saying? Amy would tell her son whenever he came home from school, upset because a classmate, whom no one seemed willing to correct or reprimand, was making his life miserable during recess, taking his lunch, damaging his homework, or spilling tomato juice all over him. I promise that next time I will let the principal or the teacher on duty at the time know. Don't worry, Mom. I won't let them humiliate me anymore. Jake assured her the last time he came home with his shirt stained with paint of all colors. However, Jake would be faced with a much bigger and more serious problem than getting the school's bullies to take a stand. Something that would call into question the safety of the school's young students and would set off all the alarm bells in the national education system. A problem for which being kind and proper was not the solution. It all started one ordinary morning when Jake left for school and forgot to take his lunch money. An oversight that would end up bringing to light a terrible secret that had been hidden at school for months. Like most parents, Amy Whitaker Anders knows that children can be incredibly forgetful, especially when it comes to the basics. And that was possibly the only flaw her son had. He was wildly absent-minded. His homework schedule was spotless and always well organized, but when it came to remembering where he'd put his socks, things got complicated. So when her son Jake forgot to bring his lunch money to school, it didn't surprise her at all. Amy knew that children were required to bring money to pay for their lunches, so she thought the worst she could expect was a bill or even a note lecturing her about her responsibility to send her son with enough money for each meal. However, she discovered that the school can be just as negligent as her son, and what Jake revealed to her that afternoon when he returned home from school left her speechless. In the public school system, no child can go without food, even if they don't have the money to pay for it. Of course, while there is a strict requirement that every child must receive sustenance, regardless of their ability to pay, there is not exactly a prerequisite that specifies what constitutes an acceptable meal, as Mrs. Anders and her son were unfortunate enough to discover. When Jake returned home from his high school in Avon, Indiana, Anders expected him to have eaten a school lunch, for which she would have to compensate him the next day. Instead, she discovered that not only had her son received a meal that was not acceptable, he hadn't even eaten it for a surprising reason. When Jake came home from school, Amy saw in her son's eyes the fear he felt. The boy was visibly affected, and it was obvious that there was something that was tormenting him inside and that he needed to explain to his mother. "Mom, I have discovered something horrible," said Jake to his mother, with a trembling voice and without stopping looking at the floor. "But I don't know what to do to solve it. It's too complicated for a 9-year-old boy. I think it's something that adults should solve. It's very serious, Mommy. There could be children in danger if someone doesn't do anything about it," sentenced the boy, looking at his mother with an anguished face. Amy was very distressed to see her son in that state. Jake had never acted like this before. In fact, every time someone had messed with him at school, she had been the one to find out and forcefully make him confess what had happened. So if her son said the matter was serious, it surely was. "Honey, you can trust me. Tell me. If it's something serious, I must know, Jake. The longer you keep silent, the worse it will be. Tell me what's wrong. We can get through it together," she said to her son, in a calm tone and approaching him to wrap her arms around his shoulders and try to reassure him. Her son looked into her eyes, a look full of anguish and guilt, and finally, after a long silence, explained everything. It turned out that after Jake alerted the school official that he had forgotten his lunch money, his tray was taken away and replaced with a simple peanut butter sandwich to eat. But that wasn't the worst of it, for aside from the fact that 2 slices of bread with peanut butter is not exactly what is considered a hearty meal, nor right for a child his age, upon taking a closer look at his lunch, Jake was met with a grisly surprise. The bread was largely covered in dark green mold. Not only was it an embarrassment of a lunch, but it was also a health hazard for him and the rest of the children. But it didn't end there. Although the presence of mold in the bread is a serious enough problem to worry about and take immediate action, Jake explained that after giving him this peculiar lunch in the cafeteria, he was not allowed to have a glass of milk or juice. Nothing at all. The school felt that with that snack of peanut butter in an advanced state of decomposition, the boy would have more than enough, and that if he wanted to hydrate or eat better, he should have remembered to bring his money, as it is perfectly stipulated in the school rules. Amy could not believe her son's words. At first she thought it must be an isolated incident, perhaps a staff error, but what her son explained next convinced her. "It wasn't a mistake, Mom. I've seen the same thing done to other children who can't always afford lunch. It's not the first time I've seen these sandwiches, but it's the first time I've had to receive one and realize the seriousness of the situation," explained the distressed child. "But you didn't tell them anything. I mean, you must have said something to the manager when you saw the sandwich in that state, right? They can't serve rotten food in a school canteen. It's unacceptable," Amy shouted indignantly. I immediately showed the moldy sandwich to the cafeteria official who, as expected, dismissed it. Then I was handed another sandwich, presumably from the same stash, but I was too afraid of what it might contain to eat it. I turned around, and as soon as I made sure no one was watching, I took a picture of it and threw it in the trash, the boy confessed. How is it possible that in the cafeteria of a school, a respectable school, moreover, they can serve moldy food and do nothing, shouted Mrs. Anders, increasingly indignant at what she was hearing. Her son looked at her dumbfounded, not quite knowing what to do. He didn't know if he had done the right thing by telling her the whole story, or if he had made it worse. "Take it easy, honey. You've done the right thing. You've done nothing wrong. It's all their fault. Don't suffer, Jake. I'll take care of everything. This is something for the adults to sort out," said Amy, very determined, as she began to draw up a plan to dismantle the dark secret hidden in her son's school. "You're going to school, Mom. I don't want you to fight, please," begged the boy, very worried about what his impulsive mother might do. Amy looked at him tenderly and smiled. She was well aware of how little her son liked conflict, so she was quick to reassure him and explain what she was planning to do to bring everything out in the open and get things settled more or less amicably. "No one is going to fight with anyone, honey. Mom is going to take care of everything, and she will do it using the most powerful weapon there is, words," she told him calmly, while hugging her son. And just as Mrs. Anders had told her son, just 3 days after discovering what was going on in the back room of the school canteen, Amy published a short but shocking article, with the prior consent of her editor-in-chief, of course. In the local Avon newspaper revealing what had happened, which she accompanied with a social media post hours later, to ensure that the reach of the news was as wide as possible, and there wasn't a single parent and/or staff member who hadn't read it. It was the first time my son had forgotten his lunch money, and instead of offering him a replacement lunch that I would pay for the next day, they offered him this, referencing the picture of the moldy peanut sandwich that was supposed to be his son's lunch. My son returned it to the manager to get one without mold, but they gave him another one exactly like it, and he was afraid to eat it. And the worst thing is that this is not the first time this has happened, because last week the exact same thing happened to one of his classmates. It is unfortunate, and certainly I am very concerned about the children who cannot afford a lunch at school every day and have to resort to the ones provided by the school. I fear for their health, the truth, wrote Amy Whitaker Anders in her social media post. Both the article and Anders' online post immediately caused a stir and prompted other concerned parents to take action against the school as a matter of urgency. Most people, many of them parents of other students at the same school, expressed outrage at the way the school handled the matter, while others were disgusted with the idea of a child being denied an acceptable meal in the first place. I was one of the lunch ladies a few years ago at Plainfield, and we almost always had extra food for the neediest kids, but it was all thrown away. It's so unacceptable. I would like to go to the school to have a talk with the principal and call the health department, filing a complaint or whatever. This situation cannot happen again, one person wrote. And what did they do with the food on the tray? Throw it away, wrote another. Predictably, Anders' publication quickly attracted media attention, forcing the school to take action and break its silence. As a result, a week after the article was published, the Avon Community School Corporation quickly issued a statement, although some found it to be quite derogatory. We appreciate being made aware of the situation and have contacted the parents to apologize. This is an unacceptable human error, and we are investigating it to ensure it does not happen again. For Amy Whitaker Anders, the school's statement was very insufficient. While she agrees that mistakes do happen, she points out the fact that this has happened repeatedly and the school has done nothing to fix it. And she concluded that for her, the incident is a matter of negligence and apathy rather than a simple human error, and that measures had to be taken as soon as possible to prevent the children's health from continuing to be put in danger. I have no idea how someone couldn't see that this was bad when handing it out. The school knew there was a problem with the food and has been trying to hide it for months. An apology is not enough. They need to fix it, she replied in another post. At the insistence of Amy and other outraged parents, sanitation conducted an investigation at the school that forced the school to take strict measures to ensure that the moldy peanut sandwich incident would not happen again. The school was quick to announce these measures publicly in a brief communique in an attempt to calm the families and settle the matter once and for all. Most parents expressed their approval of the new measures and the school's quickness in solving the problem. However, for Amy, it was still insufficient, and she decided that from that day on, her son would bring a packed lunch from home to avoid any problems, aware that the public school system could not be relied upon to provide it. Because although it is undeniably the responsibility of parents to ensure that their children receive adequate food, it is disturbing that the people entrusted with the education and care of these children overlook something so crucial and obvious. Amy won a small battle that day, but she is acutely aware that there is a long road of injustice ahead to feel that the education system is right for everyone. She doesn't forget that, and neither do any of us. Did you like this touching and surprising story? If so, we invite you to leave us a comment expressing your opinion. If you want to continue enjoying inspiring stories like this one, subscribe to our channel or check out the other videos shown at the bottom of the screen. Thank you for your cooperation.